Hi, everybody. I'm Larry Nimmer. I'm hosting the program today at District216, which is a space that uses psychedelic values of intention and integration to explore ideas. And our guest today is Patrick Gregston. Very nice to see you. You will be demonstrating repatterning ourselves through conscious movement. Patrick, how are you doing, and what's this all about?
It's great to be here. And what it's about is the fact that everybody has the potential to positive resistance through movement, particularly if they can learn to listen to the signals in their body that tell them how their movement patterns are. Unconsciously, our bodies are always constantly trying to make it really easy for us. Your autonomous nervous system, you may not remember this, but like when you learned to walk, every little bit was a struggle until you mastered that bit, and then that sort of disappears from your consciousness into your spinal column, and you go on to the next challenge. The last time most people had that experience is riding a bicycle. And then after that, it's really easy. Unless you go into a specific sport or something where you challenge yourself, you just learn and forget that you learn. And then along the way, you might, break a leg or bump into something or have some kind of trauma, and your body's nervous system is going to go to work to make sure that your attention can be out here. Because all the important stuff is out here between each other. Whatever shiny bauble you're after, love, money, etc., it's out here. So you're going to start ignoring like that little twinge in your knee, and your nervous system's going to go like, okay, consciousness isn't paying attention to that. We better figure out a way around that, and it does. And that's way anthropomorphizing what it actually is happening. It's literally your body just is trying to avoid giving you such a pain that it'll distract you. And it's like denial. It works really good right up until the moment it doesn't. The most extreme example of that is the A-type personality has the heart attack, goes into the ER, and they go, sir, and it's almost always, sir, you are going to have a bypass tomorrow. And the guy goes, no, I'm not. I have a meeting. All right, because that's how well we can be disconnected from what's going on. And so this practice that I'm going to introduce you all to is a way back from that, to actually pay attention and get more attuned. We all have a lot of knowledge about our bodies, and we almost all have a narrative about our bodies, but very few of us have had any kind of practice being in our bodies. And by that, I mean really being aware and attuned to the signals as they happen and having some idea about what to do with them when those signals are disturbing or inhibiting in any way. Much less like, oh, what could I use those signals to unwind my pattern, create a new pattern, bring out more whatever aspect of my development I'd like to have, because it goes from most people I meet start with they're in pain and they just want relief. And then you get to relief, or what I'll call equanimity with your body, and then you can go, well, I could use movement to develop certain aspects of how I process life. So, and there's a whole catalog of this. God bless the people who put it together. And so you can say, I wake up today and I know this challenge is in front of me, and do I want to be more powerful? Do I want to be able to inspire people? Do I need more compassion? Do I just need to make sure I look good? And you can do movements to create more of that. And it's pretty fun because at least you get to choose. Now, you might choose wrong for whatever your strategy was that day, but you get to choose, which is way more fun than just waking up and going, oh, what is this? Now my experience of this, I was in the motion picture industry. I was a change agent from analog to digital starting in the 80s. And I was really successful. That's how I got in Santa Barbara. I got an ocean view house with, in Montecito. My kids got to go to great public school. And so I was skilled, I was successful, and none of that helped me with my back spasms. Right? I'd stop being up here, start being down here. Got introduced to this work about 6 weeks into the work, got 20 movements, cleared the pattern in my back, haven't had back spasms since. That was pretty dramatic. Your results may vary. And I just was like, wow, I'm going to do more of that. And I remember the day I said that to my wife, I was like, I'm doubling the amount of time I'm doing this every week. And my wife was like, you're kind of busy. How's that going to work? I'm like, don't care. Okay? Because it's making my aging symptoms go away. Yeah, so the principal activity is by the man who authored it and who taught most everything I know is called resistance flexibility strength training. And it's all based on a really simple idea that you shorten a muscle, and you can all do this right now. You just bend your elbow, and this muscle gets short. Now, keeping it short, push it away from you, and that's called eccentric movement. Okay, so it's a whole system and vocabulary built on this basic idea that when you shorten a muscle and then extend it, you change the tissue in the muscle, and more importantly, you change the tissue around it that's throughout your body called fascia. So,
by the way, when
yeah.
you shorten the muscle that way, that's because it's going towards you and it's
You're
kind of-
concentrating the tissue. You're literally making the little sarcomeres in the muscle, and it's the only thing you can consciously choose to do with a muscle. Most of the time you do it unconsciously. But so if you consciously, I'm thinking about this muscle, and then you get it to extend, and there's ways to self-stretch and there's ways to be assisted, you will actually teach the sarcomeres to, one, get better at getting longer. And what's really more fascinating and counterintuitive is they get better at getting shorter. You don't realize that a lot of times you go to move, and what's impinging you is your muscle isn't getting shorter, it's bundling up like that. It usually feels like kind of something pinching. And when you get them better at getting longer, they get better at getting shorter. And so the thing most people think about in terms of stretching, which is what we colloquially call this, is how long can my hamstrings be? Can I touch my toes? And touching your toes is really not that important of a behavior. I mean, if you really want to bend over and stick your butt in the air, fine. What's more important is, can your hamstrings get short? Can you fully open your pelvis? Can you stand up straight? Now, how do I get your hamstrings to get shorter? Well, I stretch them longer so they'll get shorter. Now, that's all very simplified. So, you may not have noticed, but your body's kind of complicated. And any attempt to create a system, as this author, Bob Cooley is his name, has done, is going to be some reduction of the actual complexity of your body. So there are 320 pairs of muscles in your body. We talk about 16 groups, but that 16 groups is still powerful enough to create some really remarkable changes.
And can anybody apply this at different ages? And do you need to have a coach to do it?
I have worked with people from 8 to the oldest person I've worked on is 92. I didn't start till I was 59. And then I'm about a decade in, and I have things I'm still working on, but they're so trivial compared to like my back spasms, which were really like, immobilizing, crawl to the chiropractor, get the same adjustment every time. Walk out and go, oh my God, what do I got to do to not have this happen? And now wake up in the morning, if I got an ache or pain, it's usually because it's something I've been working on. And then when something does happen that's unexpected, I have a technique that'll make it disappear in, 15 minutes to an hour, depending on how complicated it is. Where I used to be kind of like frustrated because I'm getting old, and how am I ever going to get the things I want to do in life done? Now I'm not nearly as amped about it because I'm pretty sure I get to do whatever I want until whatever figures out how to kill me shows up. And I've already beaten at least one thing. And then, and then when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, cool. What have I got? Let's work on that. So it's like much more of an adventure. Getting old seems like a development process instead of a degrading process.
So you're going to give us a demonstration?
We are. We're going to do a really simple thing with you. So I want you're going to put down your microphone, stand in front of me. And you're all going to get to do something like this with each other. Put your hands together like this. Now, when you push your hands together, your elbows are going to want to go out. Okay? The outside of your body's nervous system is going like, oh, to get leverage. So that was a contraction. These muscles right here, they're called the infraspinatus. So you keep pushing out on your elbows and allow me to be. Now, when you do this, it's important. When you're in my position, we are not arm wrestling, right? You want to yield and let me win, but keep the tension in. Now, how do you do that? This is a little bit of a brain fart you're going to have here because it's not what you normally do.
Like
there you go.
Slowly?
Exactly. Now, fast would be damaging. We don't want that. There you go. Okay, so it's just really simple. So what I'm doing is just a little bit more. Well, you're like fortunate we didn't hit anything that's like made you go, ooh, what is that? Because that will happen. So the thing that I'm doing is I'm just doing a little more than whatever he's giving me, right? So do that again. Whatever that was, half. Get your hands a little higher. Yeah, so it'll be easier for me, right? So he still gets a stretch. From the moment his muscle that was contracted is getting longer, his muscle's being changed. We're changing Larry's structure in his back. Okay? Pretty easy, huh?
Yeah.
Notice anything?
I feel good.
I like feeling good. Cool. I'm going to do this right. So you just push your elbow back against my hand. Keep your hand going with it. Stay with that. So now we're going to do a muscle higher on your shoulder called infraspinatus. In the system that Bob Cooley has authored, this muscle is called large intestine. The one we did before was small intestine. Yeah, well, so the high value in the work is you're the only authority in your body. I mean, is there anybody who can tell me what's going on with Larry better than Larry can? Same thing's true of all of you, right? So when you say about training different people, the hardest part is this first question when I say to people, so are you cool with being the authority in your body? Yeah, there are people who say no to that. Can't work with them. Okay, so if that's you, sorry, can't help you. Okay, same thing. Think about your elbow forward. Keep it forward. Elbow going forward. So now this muscle on the other side, this is pec major. We call that one lung. Okay? So a very simple thing. Now you'll notice his whole torso is moving. Turn this way so that people can see. So pull your elbow forward. So I'm putting my hand here so I can push pull, because you can see his body would rather rotate at the hips than allow his chest to stretch. That's what your body's doing all the time. When you get to the end of the capacity of any muscle to take whatever you're asking it to do, it transfers the rotation to the next joint. So in Aikido, they can take you by the thumb and they'll rotate you till you lock a joint, until they have the center of gravity. Okay? I'm not trying to knock him down. I'm trying to get his muscles to extend. And so the other part of this is that because everybody I work with is different, I have to be totally tuned to be over there with you. I have a technique, I have a bunch of experience, but every time I meet somebody, I have to be in the space of, I don't know. So that's probably the biggest challenge, is to always remember, I don't know. And if I worked with you every day you'd be changing structurally. And we'd have to go like, well, tomorrow I don't know either, because if I did my job yesterday, he's different today. And so that's what I'll often say to people, like, so what do you notice? If you turn and look at people, if you look at Larry, there's a couple things that really distinguish him physically. Not, just that he's just a handsome guy. Shoulders taller on this side than this side. It's a little bit of twist, right to left, relative hip, pelvis. And all of those things are the patterns he's developed for whatever reason in his life. And to one degree or another, it's all working for Larry. And now if I was working with Larry...
You say it's all working for him?
Yeah, except for the part you might tell me it isn't.
Okay, gotcha.
All right? Now, what are the things that don't work for you? Well, is there some shelf you can't reach? Some drawer you can't open? Did you have to give up your low sports car because it's too hard to get in and out of? Those are all kind of typical things people get as they age. And
I have to pretend like I spring out from the couch when I get up off the couch.
there you go. Yeah. So these are things that can be addressed and reversed.
Gotcha.
So that's a fundamental idea. So you're all going to kind of like look around and pick out somebody you think you can handle, and you're going to do that same simple thing. So one of you going to be A, one of you going to be B. You want them to count off or just figure it out for yourselves. And then I have a helper here, this man in the turquoise cap, who, if you want some advice, so he and I will wander around while you do it. And so if everybody stand up, pair off. It kind of helps if you find somebody your height. Okay. The simple thing is put the heels of your hands together and push your hands together and your elbow goes out. Now remember, if you're the person resisting, you're supposed to yield. If you're the person overcoming, don't arm wrestle them. Be gently more than whatever they're giving you. And if you can't beat them, you say, less force, please. Okay? It's as simple as that. Go right ahead. So then the next piece of this is that, to check in. What was your experience of that? And so you had a feeling like, this man said, wow. Wow came from somewhere. Okay? So can you put a place and words about that place? Because the first part was physical position, movement. The next piece is thinking about it and putting some vocabulary on it. So you could say, well, that was in the middle of my back, and I don't know would be a perfectly good set of words because whoever asked you to do this before, right? But you might have some words. You might go like, well, that felt some like tension relief, or I could feel something pulling there, and oh, now I feel like a little easier to pull my shoulder blades together if I want. Lots of other possibilities exist. The point is for you to start observing yourself having the experience. Having the words about it is how you move from having a story about yourself to actually being in your body.
I wonder if we should
Let's sit back down.
I think everybody could go back to your seats. Patrick, you had a question for the audience?
So the thing that happens is, you get moved. You get some movement, but you have an experience. And what we normally do in life is we go like, ah, or oh, and then we go on. And what we do with this is we actually take note. We actually ask you to put some words on where is that? What was the nature of that feeling? Did it feel like it was burning? Did it feel like you got stabbed? There's all kinds of possibilities that occur in this. And having some words to put on it is part of the process by which you start having more skill in listening to your tissue. Now, there's a famous book called The Body Keeps the Score. All of your life is represented in your tissue, it's fair to say. So if you could just know what the score is that your body's telling you, your body has a diagnosis for you, and it'll give you a prescription. But first you have to actually be able to notice the information, and then you have to have some idea of what to do with the information. And that's what this particular tool is about. It's like, oh, I feel that in this part of my body. What is the way to contract to get to that part of my tissue and then overcome it? So like, I can sit right here. Lateral hamstring might be a little tight. Maybe I sat a lot like this, drove a car for 6 hours. I can kick my knee down and just pull it up here, and I'm stretching this. If it's inside here or it's a little pinchy, I can pull my knee up. I can just push it down. I do this routinely.
So it's isolating the area that bothers you and doing resistance there.
And it's understanding what, first identifying that thing we just did. Where did that happen? Because lots of people will go, ow, and I'll go, where is that? And they'll go, I don't know. Because that's the way they've been going through life, not paying attention to it. And it takes some practice. It's not really hard, but it takes some practice. This idea that you're going to shorten a muscle and have it moved opposite the way your brain is doing it, there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance in that. It's not as hard as learning to ride a bicycle, but it still takes some learning. So when you get better at it, it's faster to go from, oh, there's a discomfort I want to get rid of and know what to do with it. But it happens with practice.
Is part of it a repatterning?
Well, so absolutely. So this is. Let's get back to the title of this. So you are in a pattern. If you if you are in this position all day long, this is the pattern your fascia is trying to support. That's why getting up off the couch might get a little sticky. If you have been limping your whole life, or you've got yourself like this, then this is the pattern your body's in. And doing stretching can correct those things. Put you back into balance, give you much more sense of being in charge of your development and your experience.
Did you call it stretching?
Stretching is the colloquial term because resistance, flexibility, strength training is a mouthful. So and it looks like stretching. People are getting their limbs moved through a range, either themselves or having other people assist them.
So how do people benefit from this? Do they need to go to a coach like you, or is there a video online?
So the author has a class every Saturday morning. Right now he's got a series for free Saturday at 10 o'clock. If you go to thegeniusofflexibility.com and sign up.
What is it again?
Thegeniusofflexibility.com.
Thegeniusofflexibility.com.
There's also in the studio in the middle of Presidio Park behind Playa Azul is a studio. And there are drop-in classes there on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Look on the website for what the current schedule is. And people are welcome to come in at any level. I mean, it's not that difficult to learn to get started. Nobody ever says nothing happened. Sometimes people say, I don't really want to work that hard, because it is deceptively work. I worked a lot with Mike, and it's work. You break a sweat, and it doesn't seem like you're doing much, but you will break a sweat, especially if the movement we are trying to do is going right into a territory where you've had a traumatic injury. Your nervous system has been really busy spending all the time since that injury happened to not let you be in a position where you can feel that again, which is a great thing, except for eventually there's a bunch of places you can't put your limbs. That's why old people say life is small. It's not because the world has physically gotten small. It's like where can they put things has gotten reduced.
It's funny how we give such a low priority to our bodies sometimes, working them and understanding them.
It's so true. Well, they make movies about it. It's as if there's little people driving a bus. And no, you're not a bus. The other way to say it is that there's an intelligence in your body, and if you would access that intelligence, it would leverage the one between your ears.
Is there a connection between this and consciousness and psychedelics?
Well, so for instance, you all just had a new experience. Whatever age you're at, who would have thought, got up this morning, you're like, oh, I can have a new experience in myself. So that's the first level of commonality.
So people do psychedelics for new experiences. That makes sense.
And new perspectives. It changes your outlook by using a chemical tool. And there's a bunch of things about it that are similar. What is the context? What do they call it? Site and place and what is the word? Set and setting. Thank you. So all those things are very similar. If you're in the right set and setting and in the context that is constructive, you'll get a lot of benefits. Now, they won't all be comfortable. In fact, my experience is that most of the things that really heal us happen right next door to almost intolerable. It's kind of, if you've got a traumatic injury and we're going to move you through the territory where your body hasn't been willing to do that. Oh, and let's just say that traumatic injury happened in the middle of some other things that were happening in your life, not coincidentally, then you're going to re-experience a lot of that in the unfolding or taking a part of that pattern.
Do you mean emotionally or physically?
Absolutely, both. So there's another layer of this. So the first is just position and movement. The guy who authored it noticed that when he would move certain muscles, he could feel certain organs. And somebody pointed him out to him, that's like Chinese medicine. So he studied Chinese medicine for 4 years, and lo and behold, the movement of qi is through fascia, thought to be. And if you could clear out your fascia, you'll get better energy movement of the qi. And therefore, for instance, 6 months into doing this practice, my bladder was no longer my alarm clock. Okay? Now, what happens in bladder is a lot of things around delivery.
What if you have a lot of drinks the night before?
Yeah, that too.
Okay.
Yeah. No. So my main thing is my bladder's capacity for holding it through the night changed. Now, I still wake up in the middle of the night, but it's not to go pee. Okay? So it's a different experience of waking up when it's like, was that a bad dream? As opposed to anything else. Oh, the dog wants out. Whatever it might be. My main point is my bladder got healthier. My eyesight, I have a particular condition that means every 2 years I get a guy to look in my eyes. 9 months after I started doing this work, the guy looks in my eyes and goes, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, your retinas are like 20 years younger. And I was kind of embarrassed. I was like, I've been doing this stretching thing. He goes, whatever, looks good. And I was like, okay. Also around that 6 to 9 month period, I started finding that I was much more attracted to foods I didn't really know. I'd literally walk in the produce department and look at something and go like, why is that interesting to me? I don't know what it's called. I don't know how to cook it, but it looks interesting to me. And that was just me tuning in to my intuition, my body's method of telling me information that isn't through my nervous system, which is also thought to be one of the functions of fascia.
So if this is so great, why isn't everybody doing it?
Well, that's a really good question. And, it's not a hack, for one thing. It's not a hack. It's work. So the vocabulary is simple, but it still requires you to learn the vocabulary. And the vocabulary is not just words, it's also movements and paying attention to your own body. So it takes time to dedicate. Who here puts an hour every day into taking care of themselves? Yeah. Oh, good. There's a couple people. Right. So why wouldn't you?
It certainly makes sense. And just you're saying that whenever anybody does those exercises, they feel something.
Things change.
And I did. And
yeah.
It's
now
definitely
imagine,
worth
so
it.
when I meet people for the first time, we do 8 vectors on each limb. We strap you to a board to give you more leverage, and we do an assessment. And we'll come up with what's your tissue got to say in relationship to what you had to say about your history and what you're conscious of. The process is not short. It's not take a pill, for instance. And then to bring it back to, like my experience with psychedelics, every time I did psychedelics, starting when I was a teenager up until recently, has always been like, wow, I learned a lot and I got some homework to do. So psychedelics is not like, oh, wow, I'm enlightened now. It was, oh, wow, I have to rethink that. That got me a different perspective about X, Y, or Z. So there's a similarity in that.
So have people experimented at all doing this movement on cannabis or psychedelics?
It is inevitable that people will experiment once they learn any tool to combine it with other tools. And yeah. And my own experience of it, I don't think, I didn't get a lot out of using pot. I felt things a lot more. What I got a lot out of was MDMA definitely gave me a lot more nuance about what in much more precise locations, and really a deeper understanding, so that when I was, we'll call it sober, I could find those places again. I could find those movements that hadn't been available to me when I hadn't been using that tool.
Is there a way you can record the movements to remember them for later?
Oh, there's an online database. There are a lot of people who have created videos of them. My clients, when they ask me for something, I'll make them a video right then. It's absolutely a great tool, because a lot of it is monkey see, monkey do, until you learn to listen to your own body, and then it's all custom. You will move according to how your body asks you to move, and then the vocabulary just becomes the way we talk about it.
Is there a training program online?
There is not a training program online, and at the moment, the trainings available are in classes. Like, for instance, every Friday morning at 7:30 a.m., I do a free Zoom. Everybody's free to drop in. I mainly have people from across the country. This is a leftover from the pandemic when people across the country couldn't come to trainings. Currently, we don't have any more in-depth trainings scheduled at the studio. But if people show up and say, I want to learn, something might happen that way. It's kind of that way in life.
Do older people need this more than younger people?
Older people seem to be more aware that they need to do something different. When you're young, you're busy striving, learning about yourself. You're busy being out in the world, trying to either figure out what your gift is or how to turn your gift into a way that sustains you. And you will often have to achieve some level of success and realize how that's hurt you before you'll realize, oh, this isn't working for me. Because, hey, I'm making progress. I'm a success on this main level that the society focuses on. But plenty of young people, I would say I meet people anywhere from early 30s up to the 80s. I meet children because their parents bring them to me.
And is there scientific research to show this works?
So there's a lot of research around fascia and how fascia works. This particular method of eccentric movement, you might find a couple hundred papers, but they're almost all focused on athletic performance. Does stretching make sprinters faster? And that's on a 10-year cycle that goes in and out of style. Yes, for 10 years, and then somebody else comes along and has a paper that says, no, stretching doesn't make them faster. Not much practical application for the average human. It'd be nice if we had a dense enough population of people schooled and disciplined about it to create the things that would make academic research happen. We're not that yet, in spite of the fact that this has been around for 40 years. And the guy has been to the Olympics, and he got a book deal out of the fact he took a woman who had retired from
you were telling me the story of him. What's his name?
So Bob Cooley's his name. And Bob Cooley was walking down a street in Boston where he got hit by a car going 70 miles an hour, killed the person he was walking with. He went through 2 years of procedures. They gave him some pills and went, you're good. And he was like, no, I'm not. And he proceeded to dedicate himself to figuring out how to be more comfortable in his body. And it's 40 years later, he's still working on it. Along the way, he's developed this vocabulary. He's published a book called The Genius of Flexibility. In the late 90s, he met Dara Torres, who had been a Olympic gold medal winning swimmer. She'd retired, had 2 kids, and at the age of 28, decided she'd go swim again. And her goal was to go to the Sydney Olympics. And she worked with Bob, and she not only went to the Sydney Olympics, she won 6 medals. And then she took him on a media tour going Secret Weapon. So that got him a book deal. But it's not an easy thing to access. He's taken people to the finals at Wimbledon. He's taken people to the Winter Olympics in skating. He's done gymnastics. But by and large...
You mean using this method?
Yeah. Can definitely improve people's performance using this method.
So it's not been over-marketed, but...
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's, the author is a quirky little guy. And I don't mean little just because he's short. He would like everybody he's ever taught to treat him like a father. And what do you know? People want to rebel and go out on their own. And that's what's happened a lot. So I can find you people all over the country who have trained with this man but don't stay in a relationship to him. And that would be one of the reasons that has it spread more. It's this, and there's a lot of modalities in the world that have been born out of the same thing. Somebody gets hurt, they come up with a way to heal themselves, they develop a following, and it either stays right around them or it splinters. It's really rare that things get to the point of, say, like Rolfing. Rolfing started that way. Ida Rolf did a really much better job than a lot of other people at creating an organization and a legacy. But other people will tell you that the legacy she left is restrictive and over demanding. And so it's not easy in a world in which the model is we're going to make it a pill, and pharmacology, which is very well established, has the dominant position in the society about all healing, to the point that it's taken over what doctors do. Doctors think in terms of chemistry far more than they think of mechanics, unless they're an orthopedic, in which they just look at you and like, well, this is what we can cut.
If one practices this, how many times a day do you do it, or for how long? And can you do it by yourself, or do you need a partner?
So you can do it by yourself, but like lots of things, it's more fun with other people. When I meet somebody who has a complaint, I'll take the assessment and I'll give them a recommendation of one thing to do daily. And I go, and if you do it once daily, it would be really even way better if you just do it twice daily. So I'll beg them for like, can you give me 5 minutes twice a day? And then the next time I meet them, they're like, did you do your homework? And then I have an idea, I can sort of plot their arc. And then lots of people, they just want me to do the work. They think I'm doing the work when they're actually having to show up and do the work. Some people will come in and go, well, you fixed me. And it's like, you're not broken. Okay, your body's doing the best it can in the circumstance it's in. I can show you a way to improve that, but it's still your work. And then we proceed to work together. And to the extent that people do homework on a daily basis, they get better much faster than the people who don't do homework. What you do every day really matters, particularly if it's a thing that, if you're having back trouble, you're having trouble, say, picking up something that you really want to pick up, like your child. Your arm is really messed up because you've been carrying around a wiggling infant for days at a time that's constantly changing weight. You can get a lot of progress really fast, but it's still better if that person does adaptations and things to address the issue on a daily basis.
Well, we're going to open it up to questions in just a moment. And first, we're going to have our change your lens questions. But
okay.
Even before that, is there anything else you'd like to say on the subject before we open it up?
Well, it's the best rabbit hole I've ever been in. Okay, so I've been at it a decade. Just 2 weeks ago, I was doing a movement. I was hanging from a bar. I was actually up on a little stool because it was the way I could reach the bar at my Y. And I was leaning into it, and I had a little string of something right here through this teres major and into my spine, and it went pop in a really interesting way. It felt like a picture of a string dissolving in space is what it felt like in my mind's eye. And I was like, oh, that was great. And then I instantly knew I better get off this stool because I am not capable of staying stable. Whatever got released in my nervous system was like making my brain shut down. I got off and I walked right over to a bench and I sat down. I actually ended up laying down on the bench, and it was a good 5 minutes before my body was like, okay, now you can get up and do something. So what was that? I wish I could tell you. I know that I got something that had been in my body, stuck for a long time, released. And it was my body had to process that and was willing to shut my brain off in order to do it. Now, will you have that experience? I don't know. I got clients that fall asleep. Certain thing goes, they'll go, oh, and then boom, they're asleep right in front of me. And I'm like, and then I'll do movements that I know usually they aren't comfortable with just to see if it'll wake them up. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. So what I'm saying is it's really fun, and it's a mystery I'm not at the end of, and I got a decade at it. And it's kind of like life. And it's a great adjunct and tool and has empowered me to, redefine who I'm being in day to day. It changes my experience and the sense of, that every challenge is actually an opportunity to learn. I mentioned I had my doctor would say mortal diagnosis. I didn't agree with him. I went along with his treatment, but then I did a lot of this work to address it. And it took me 6 years and other doctors to convince the medical establishment I am not going to die from that. Now, how'd that happen? Well, one, I took authority, and I took actions, and I engaged with the people who were of the opinion I was going to die and convinced them otherwise by getting the test that they were using to change. How'd that happen? No. But I can tell you, it was really hard to get them to write a letter. They don't like to contradict each other, especially in writing. But I got them to do that. So how did that happen? Well, I did this method. That's what I can tell you. I'm not going to say that's going to happen for you, but it was pretty interesting for me.
Why is it called eccentric movement?
So that's a kinesiology term. What you're doing unconsciously all the time is shortening your muscle. That's concentric. You're concentrating the tissue. If you contract a muscle and don't let it move, isometric movement. Eccentric movement is you are contracting it and then making it longer. Those, I don't know why somebody way back whenever picked eccentrics. Maybe somebody who knows Latin could tell us why that's appropriate. But those are the three ways in which muscle movement's described in kinesiology.
So quick change of pace, the change your lens questions, and then we'll go to questions to the audience. And each week we asked the people interviewed here at the District House for the District216 Change Your Lens series. First question being, what person was your greatest influence and why?
Well, like many people, I'll say my father. My father was a journalist, and he taught me to read 3 different accounts of every story that I could find, and then he would ask me to give my own account. This is dinner table entertainment for him, I guess. And then he would be devil's advocate. So I learned really quickly how to distinguish a true account from a false account, how to evaluate a witness, how to synthesize various facts into an opinion of my own. I learned that who, what, when, where, and how is not just a journalistic tool. It's a tool for lots of things. And then he also taught me, because he was a writer and he loved to write, and that's why he became a journalist, that when you can be satisfied in yourself for whatever you do, everything else is gravy. It doesn't matter if people reward you or take note of it. And a lot of things that I have done that have made me money and weren't nearly as satisfying as the things I was doing while I was making the money, because it was like, I know nobody else could have done that. That is really satisfying. And then I could go to meetings where I was competing with other people for a job and know I'm the only guy who knows how to do that. And that was really fun. I stopped worrying about, do I have a good haircut? Have I dressed well? I know I could walk in the room and I know a value I provide. And I learned that because he said this thing. It's like, achieve excellence on your own terms, and that's the best satisfaction. You're doing something really well, you'll get paid.
What was your dad's body movement like? I'm not sure that's a relevant question.
He had a nasty femur fracture in high school playing basketball that got set wrong. And so he had a funny wobble when he walked, and he could never do too much exercise because he developed calcium deposits on the top of the ball of his hip that would grind his hip. Now, he never had it replaced. He didn't live in the time where that was common. He was also an alcoholic, so he had a lot of things that go with being an alcoholic in terms of physiology and body shape. I didn't really learn a lot about being in a body from him. What I learned from him was you really shouldn't work with power tools because you're going to earn a living with your hands. And I was like, what? I'm using my hands with power tools. Right, you don't want to risk them. Because he typed, right? And he was like, really important to know, don't mess up your hands.
Interesting, okay. Yeah. Question 2, if you were alone on a deserted island, what's the book you would bring if you could bring only one?
Well, these days I'd say Grey's Anatomy. I don't know all the words, but I'm constantly searching for more words because I'm having this experience of so right now, most of you don't recognize that you are disconnected from parts of your body. And the first experience most people have is like, wow, I don't remember feeling that. I didn't know I could have a feeling there. And so for a while, the experience of getting this in your body is you're adding things back that have been turned off because they hurt. And at some point, that flips and you're like, how come I haven't felt this part yet? Wait a second. How come I don't feel this? And then you start searching for the sort of the unexplored parts of your inner map. And so I find myself looking at Chinese medicine meridian maps, Grey's Anatomy. Those are, and then I'm just a glutton for more information about other people's ideas about how do bodies work.
Very nice. I've heard the idea that the psychonauts are into their mind and their expansion, but what is there a term for being into your body? That's another area to explore, I guess.
I don't know. We'll have to
but I like your
put that on the bulletin board and ask for people to suggest.
Okay. Similarly so, if you were on a deserted island with a record player, what vinyl would you bring?
So I really like Joe Walsh's "So What." There's one song on there that he didn't even write. That's just about just enjoying every day, appreciating it for what it is. You know,
Joe Walsh.
So what? I can't remember. Happy Ways is the name of the tune. And it's just whenever I want, I can put on Happy Ways, and today's great. I have a lot of, pardon? And Life's Been Good is a similar tune. It's just a different album. Happy Ways is a lot shorter and doesn't have so many rock and roll jokes in it.
Change gears a bit. Do we live in a simulation?
Who cares?
Good answer. Do you believe in an afterlife? And if so, by the way, we ask the guests each week this. Do you believe in an afterlife? If so, what do you think it is? And through psychedelics, can we access portions of it?
So there's a lot of really interesting information coming out and should be published soon that I get shared by. I got a lot of clients into really interesting stuff. And it's one guy shared with me. He's connected people studying consciousness at the University of Arizona, and those people turned him on to a guy in Toronto who ran an experiment where he was observing what's called a microtubule in a neuron. And so what happens is photons hit the microtubule and it gets absorbed when you're conscious, and then about a second goes by and the photon gets emitted and it's altered, usually diminished. And if you put the person under anesthesia, the photon hits the microtubule and it comes out almost instantly undiminished because they're not conscious. So is your consciousness either something that was delivered through light, photons, or is that, so when you start looking at that and you start looking at quantum physics, you start going like, so this idea of a shared reality, simulation, some people's idea, is that stuff that's just light moving between us all as beings of light who happen to inhabit these physical forms at the moment? And it's a question I ask my clients a lot. I say, why does a spirit inhabit a body? Your turn.
Why does a spirit inhabit a body?
And it's fine for you to say, I don't know, Patrick, what's your idea?
They can play with the body.
Excellent, exactly. It needs a medium to work in. So if we're creatures of light, then one teacher who came to Bob's studio said, this is the densest place in the universe. If you can make stuff change here, you can work anywhere. Right? And so that idea that we're here changing. So then what is that change that we're all doing? And I would posit that we're all here to heal. Okay? Now, so your lineage, your tribe, your own birth trauma, the things that were done to you till you got to be an awareness that, you could do something to heal yourself. We're all busy doing some variation of that. And to the degree that I feel like I'm healing myself, definitely that's why I do this work. I'm working on people and they go, oh, you're getting a lot of exercise. And I go, it just looks like I'm helping you. I'm healing me first. And then that definitely attracts a certain set of people to me who teach me things about myself. So it's a really, it's a process that we're all going through consciously or not. And in some cases, and hopefully most, we are healing ourselves from, I don't know, 250 million years of there not being enough and the things we did to each other over there not being enough. One of the things that I found really illuminating is that 1947 was the first year we actually generated enough calories to feed everybody on the planet. And despite the population increase, we still do, but we still don't feed everybody. Pisses me off. Just like, what is wrong with us? I mean, there are places in the world where you can go give the people, administering that jurisdiction, whatever it is, enough food to feed everybody, and they wouldn't, because some of those people are others they're not going to feed. And it's just like, how messed up. But at the same time, 250 million years of not being enough has really inbred in us. I got to keep this for me.
Back to psychedelics.
Yeah.
If you could do it with any person, dead or alive, who would you do it with?
Well, I had a really great experience with Ram Dass in an auditorium with 3,500 people where he breathed us all into an altered consciousness. So I'd probably say, Ram Dass, I'd love to be able to go back and have that, have him explain it to me, and then if we could do some psychedelics too, that would be really great.
Where were you with them?
That was at the Shrine Auditorium. I was going to USC at the time, and my roommate walked into my house and went, "Hey, Ram Dass is speaking at the Shrine. Let's go." Walked in there. I might have been like $350 for a ticket, and there were maybe 2,500 people when we started, and then the building just filled up. And he started talking, and then at some point he was like, "So I want you all to breathe like this. And then I want you all to breathe like that." And then, and then he would talk while he had us breathing, had the whole pattern going. Whole building is breathing together. And, and then he was like, "Okay, that's it." And we got up, and we were walking out the building, and everybody's looking at each other. "Are you high?" "Yeah, I'm high." "How did that happen?" "Beats me." But it was like building full of people, totally buzzed.
His book, Be Here Now, in 1971 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Turned my thinking around.
One of my favorite psychedelic experiences is the woman I was dating at the time and I ate mushrooms and read the book. And I was like, "Whoa, got to do that again." It was very like, whoa. Do you think this book was intended? I mean, yes, it was intended for you to do psychedelics while you read it.
I might have to do that.
Yeah. And for a while, it was my spring cleaning ritual. And then, I grew up.
Is there a substance you're fascinated with and want to try but you haven't tried yet?
I'm very curious about whatever it is the toad sweat thing is, because I hear all these people talk about having a 15-minute epiphany.
What's it called?
Ketamine.
5-MeO-DMT.
And I haven't had the question where I thought I wanted it resolved in 15 minutes to say, "Oh, let's go do that." But something will show up. I'm kind of saving that.
Okay, maybe when we get to questions, anybody can mention anything about that. And let's see, 2 more questions. Would you describe one of your most impactful psychedelic experiences and what made it so?
So I'm with a bunch of my high school buddies. Easter holiday, we're in the desert, and we all take acid, and we start running up and down sand dunes. And we're running up the dune and jumping, right? And we're in a line because not everybody runs up through sand the same speed. And so I'm about third, fourth in line, and I run up this one dune, and the people in front of me are all like dead stop. Nobody's jumping. And I run up there and I'm like looking at them, and then it was a cliff. God bless that the first guy had saw it and stopped. But it was like by the time the 6 people in the line had all like gathered at the top, we're all like, yeah, this is great, and we need to be careful.
That's crazy.
Well, it was, it gave, I don't know if you've had this experience, Larry, but when I turned 25, my mom called me and said, "Congratulations." And I go, "For what?" And she goes, "You're going to make it to 65 now." I'm like, "Huh?" She goes, "Statistics say, particularly white young men, they do everything stupid that kills them by the time they're 25. After you're 25, you're going to last to 65. And that was one of the things that made it easy for me to make it to 25. I stopped doing a certain number of risky, dumb behaviors.
So Ram Dass was popular in the 70s when we were young. Psychedelics were popular in the 70s when we were young. And now we're a bunch of older people that help promote psychedelics. And I wonder if that's part of why it's coming back, because we approve of it now.
I think we had to outlast. We had to outlast a lot of people for whom psychedelics were really scary. When I look at the 60s, I mean, I was blessed to be born in that little cohort that my adolescence coincided with 1967. And so everybody that's kind of born between middle of 53 and the middle of 55, they're okay with everybody else's sexuality. A little bit before that, a little bit after that, it's not as true. It's really interesting. And it took me a long time to put it together. It was like, because our formative identifying years occurred when free love and whatever floats your boat was a really normal thing. And, my parents, they were threatened because I wanted to wear my hair long. I don't know why, but they were, so there was people shot each other on campuses in the United States because people were just protesting. They didn't want to go to a war. They weren't actually being, violent, although they did burn a recruiting station in Ohio before Kent State. But it wasn't like they were killing people, but then the authorities felt like they had to assert their authority by killing us. Right? And so we've had to outlast a lot of those people. And I'm a boomer, and I can say, boomers have fucked up a lot of shit, but they've also broken a lot of ground. So yeah, and then we look at a lot of, if we had psychedelics being researched, would we have had the number of Vietnam vets be psychos? You know, we don't know, but it's definitely a thing that like we took our eye off the ball on that stuff. You know, and this is part of the problem of you know, we are so far from being humans, as in understanding our part in the overall life force. You know, were you here this spring? This was the best spring I've ever been in California. You go up and down this coast this spring, and you could just feel the life. It was just like things were bursting out all over. And then it's like there are more rodents, there's more birds of prey, there's just everything's really alive. And well, you're part of that. You're not, you know, it's animism, you know, but it's like society wants to pretend that the rules of man, economics, are somehow greater than the rules of God, which are physics and chemistry. You know, and then you tell people about physics and chemistry, and they're like, no, that violates my faith. And it's like, how'd you miss that? You know, what is creation but, you know, these natural laws? So I'm just kind of mystified by, you know, the over identification with your bank account or the stuff. Now, I'm into stuff. I got a lot of nice toys. You know, but it's, I'm particularly this work has made it way easier for me to recognize I am part of what's going on, and that we are a wave in time together. And it's made me even more interested in, you know, am I healing somebody who's going to in turn multiply that effect? I mean, I live in Solvang. I moved to Solvang during the pandemic, and I could never leave Solvang and just work on rich guys who want to have better tennis games. But that would be really boring. I'd much rather work on people who are trying to make a difference in the world. I think that's how I got here.
That's fun. Came back to Santa Barbara.
Oh, Jacob.
Yeah, nice.
I mean, God bless Jacob and Mike and having this focus and turning their entrepreneurial successes into the things to change the way society looks at what could be a really powerful tool to heal all of us. You know, I think that this is definitely the resonance I have around District216. You know, I know people who are veterans who swear by the healing powers of their experiences with particularly mushrooms. You know, I'm sure other tools will be found to be effective in that. And you're like, yeah, let's get people to transform their traumas. You know, and then definitely that's my experience of working with people with this technique, is that we are transforming. We're taking something that is a wound and turning it into a healing and a strength. Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Last question, a simple one in 60 seconds. What's the nature of consciousness?
Wow. Well, I think it is one's ability to be present and connect the present to whatever else might be relevant to an understanding and empowerment in that moment.
Being in the moment.
But being not just like, oh, fun, you know, this. It's also like, oh, how is, you know, what's led up to this moment, and then what will come from this moment affect my way of being present.
It's pretty important. Now we're going to open up the questions from the audience.
Is there anything else you'd want to know? What else, guys?
Sure.
So in your practice of working with different people, have you found that there's a connection between certain types of areas of the body that then connect back to a new association in the mind or emotionally for?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a whole somatic map or catalog that you can lay over parts of the body. Grief tends to be in pecs, what we call lung. Sadness tends to be in medial hamstring, what we call pancreas. Goes on like that. And you can find things in other somatic disciplines and modalities. So there's a lot of layers of that out there and available. It's not a common catalog yet. You know, you meet a lot of people who do physical training who get focused on fascia, and then they start to go, you know, it's really remarkable how all these other emotional things come out when we're working on people. You know, and over here we're going like, yeah, we got a catalog for that. Yeah. And I don't know the experience for the person generally is, wow, I'm really tight there. And then we're working on that really tight there, and then they'll have something released, and they may have tears, they may have some sense of relief, and then the more distant thing is they might have a story that they can relate to. Oh, I remember when I fell off a horse when I was 13, and that part of my body, Really rarely somebody goes, oh, I remember this thing happening, and then their tissue releases. Sometimes it happens in that order. It's pretty fascinating that way. But for the most part, my body doesn't feel good. Let's move the body. Stuff emanates from that. Oh, you're all totally satisfied? Come on.
Would a trip to the physical therapy office include these things? Are they not really dabbling in this? If, let's say, you're recovering from surgery and you've got you some PT appointments.
Yeah. So the assignment for your physical therapist is to get you through your benefit. Okay? Your benefit. So you have a policy, and the policy is going to say for whatever surgery you had, there's X number of visits. So the most important thing is that they get all those visits. Okay? And that's not an indictment of the people. It's the business model that they work under, and it influences them. I think that everybody I've met who's a physical therapist would love to be healing people better than they are, but they work inside a business model that has made your injury into a commodity based on what your insurance say. So I have been to a doctor with one of my children who was injured, a physical therapist, and I've said, what's the plan to get full mobility by the end of the benefit? And they were like, well, we don't usually get asked that question. I'm like, I know, but I don't want to come someplace unless you can tell me how you're going to get the result inside the 15 meetings we're going to have. And I never got a plan. And the child picked the therapist they felt had been most caring, the people who cater to their comfort. And almost guaranteed that's not going to get you the result. You have to go through your discomfort, particularly after a surgery. It's a huge insult to the body just to give it a general anesthetic, much less cut it open. So it's a lot of work. And I don't know that, unless you're on that side of the bell curve, that means you're going to get the result a lot faster than everybody else. What happens to people on the other side of the bell curve? It's a really tough thing. And, what I can say is that, there's a certain number of fascial cells that get broken up when I move you, but I don't know how many you've got that make you feel stuck. So I can say, and I make a joke of this with people. It's like, okay, well, we're on about 1,000 more of these, because I can't really tell you. It's just, and I've had the experience myself of getting, having something. I had a little thing here in my hip that was really stuck. And I traded with a guy who was a peer of mine 3 days a week for 45 minutes. We did nothing but try and get that piece to come apart. And the third week it came apart. He even felt it. He was like, oh, that's gone now. I was like, okay, cool. I couldn't have predicted it. It was just, we're going to work on it till it's resolved.
And you had mentioned vocabulary a few times. Is that just basically different movements? Is that how you
right? So for instance, that thing I said about, we call this lung, right? So if the word lung doesn't just mean my lung, it means this muscle group that's associated in Chinese medicine with the lung, and it's also, what does that muscle do, right? So that's a word that has 4 different layers of meaning to it. And we have 16 groups, so there's 16 times 4. When you can tell me all those, I'll say you know the vocabulary. Now, 16 times 4, it's not a lot, but it's still not something you're going to walk out of here tonight with.
Thank you.
I had one. You had touched on your father having, being an alcoholic, but not having the physiology of an alcoholic. What is the physiology of an alcoholic?
They get big red noses.
Okay.
They tend to have bellies. They definitely have distended livers. Those kinds of things. Yeah. They're things, so alcoholics really fall in the people who have the chemical dependency, and then people who have the psychological dependency, and then there's the group that has both. So you can see different aspects of that. When you start looking at populations like that, you start to see patterns. That said, everybody's unique. So there's a lot of variation, but when I think of the person, the body that I see as my father, it was like, well, particularly at the end of his life, it was like, oh yeah, he's got those shapes, lifetime of behavior like that. And the last 23 years of his life, he was sober. But that stuff stuck with him because I didn't have stretching to give him corrective measures at the time.
Well, you're all welcome to stay and have a chat and have some hors d'oeuvres. Thanks so much, Patrick
Thank you.
Gregston. You did a great job. It's fascinating.
All right.